They said it was for security. They said it was temporary. They said it was relocation. But look closer. Barbed wire, guard towers, searchlights, and rifles aimed at American families. A survivor later asked a question that still burns today. If we were put there for our protection, why were the guns pointed inward instead of outward? Source. In 1942, the United States, fighting for freedom overseas, authorized the forced removal of people of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast. Many were citizens. Most had no charges against them, no trial, no due process. This is the story of how fear and racism became policy, how families were uprooted in days, and how, behind fences in the American desert, people still found ways to resist, to endure, and to demand justice. Tonight we follow that journey, from the order signed in Washington, to life in camps like Manzanar, to moments of protest so intense the army fired into a crowd. And we ask the question America still struggles to answer. What does the Constitution mean when we're afraid? This isn't just history, it's a warning label. Before the fences, there were ordinary lives: farms, fishing boats, storefronts, school dances, church services, baseball teams. Japanese immigrants, Issei, built communities under laws that often denied them full belonging. Their children, Nisei, were American citizens, raised with American schools, American music, American dreams. And then came war, and the oldest American reflex: suspect the outsider. But this time, suspicion didn't stop at individuals. It swept up an entire community, citizens and non-citizens alike, based on ancestry. December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The nation reels. On the West Coast, fear hardens into certainty. They're among us. Government suspicion expands from enemy aliens to all persons of Japanese descent, even American citizens. 2 months later, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signs Executive Order 9066. Not a list of names, not evidence, not charges. A blank check, authorizing military commanders to designate military areas and exclude any or all persons. Those words are deceptively clean. What they meant in real life was messy, humiliating, and devastating. Families given days to pack, property sold for pennies, communities emptied. Under the authority of the order, the West Coast becomes a military zone. People receive notices, sometimes with 48 hours, to leave. Many lose homes, farms, businesses, and belongings they can't carry. Source.
They're sent first to assembly centers, often fairgrounds and racetracks, then transported inland to relocation centers, the camps. The government had a name for it. Families had another: imprisonment without trial. And one detail reveals the truth. The fences were not symbolic. They were real. In the camps, multiple families share tar-papered barracks. Privacy collapses. Winters cut through thin walls. Summers bake the rooms. Meals happen in communal mess halls. Bathrooms are shared. Normal life is rebuilt in fragments. School, work details, social clubs, under surveillance. Source lines us. The camps are remote by design. Desolate locales, the record says. The list reads like a map of isolation. Manzanar and Tule Lake in California, Poston and Gila River in Arizona, Minidoka in Idaho, Topaz in Utah, Hart Mountain in Wyoming, Jerome and Rower in Arkansas, Grenada in Colorado. Source lines is. To some Americans, this was wartime necessity. To those inside, it was a daily lesson. Your rights can be suspended if enough people are afraid. Inside the camps, pressure builds, not only against the government, but within communities strained by trauma. Who cooperates to make life survivable, and who sees cooperation as surrender? Who speaks up, and who fears the consequences? Even the official record notes that people who resisted could be sent to a special camp at Tule Lake for dissidents. Source line says, a system like this doesn't only confine bodies. It tests loyalties. It fractures trust. It dares people to turn on one another. Manzanar, one of the best-known camps, became the site of an eruption. In December 1942, tensions and accusations ignited into an incident that ended with soldiers firing into a crowd, killing 2 and injuring many. Source line says, it began with the beating of JACL leader Fred Tayama and the arrest of Harry Ueno, an arrest many believed was retaliation for Ueno's accusations against a camp official. Crowds formed, negotiations failed, stones flew, tear gas was fired. Then gunfire. 2 young men died, 17-year-old James Ito and 21-year-old Jim Kanagawa. Source line says, this is the tragedy at the heart of the story. People already stripped of freedom watched the government answer protest with bullets, inside an American camp, guarded by American soldiers. David versus Goliath doesn't always look like battlefield heroics. Sometimes it looks like unarmed people facing the full force of the state. Outside the fences, legal challenges rise. 3 citizens challenged the curfews and removal through the courts: Gordon Hirabayashi, Fred Korematsu, and Mitsuye Endo. Source line says, the results were mixed and revealing. Some rulings went against them. Others cracked open the logic of mass confinement.
And in the Endo case, Justice Murphy condemned what he called the unconstitutional resort to racism in the evacuation program. Source: in a democracy, courts are supposed to be the brakes, but wartime can make even the Constitution feel negotiable. As the war drew towards its end, the camps slowly emptied. But release wasn't a return to normal. Many came back to find homes gone, businesses ruined, neighborhoods changed. Some communities fractured permanently. Records show that in certain places, only a fraction returned after the war. Source: for years, the official story tried to minimize what happened, but survivors carried the memory in their bodies and in family silence and in the hard work of rebuilding. Decades later, the U.S. government formally acknowledged wrongdoing. In 1988, Congress passed and President Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, apologizing and providing $20,000 payments to surviving people who had been incarcerated. Source: no payment can restore a stolen childhood. No apology can fully return what was taken: property, time, trust. But acknowledgement matters, because denial is how history repeats. Executive Order 9066 didn't name Japanese Americans. It didn't have to. The machinery of exclusion found its target anyway, because prejudice was already waiting. Today, new crises bring new calls for sweeping powers, mass suspicion, security at any cost. So the question isn't only how could they do that? The question is, what would we allow now if we were scared enough? If this documentary helped you see this history with clearer eyes, share it, especially with someone who thinks it couldn't happen here. Subscribe for more deep dive documentaries on American history, civil liberties, and the communities whose stories were pushed to the margins. And in the comments? What do you think is the most important lesson of Japanese American incarceration, and how should it shape policy today? Remember the quote. Remember the fences. And remember where the guns were pointed.